Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Gene Positive podcast. My name is Diane Campbell, and before we get into any episodes, I want to take a moment to share why this podcast exists and what I hope it becomes for the people who find it. This podcast is for anyone who has a connection to Huntington's disease in their life, for the people who have lived experience with it, for families, partners, and caregivers, for people who are at risk, gene positive, or gene negative, and for anyone who is trying to understand how HD fits into their life. I want this to be a space where people can come for information, for understanding, and for resources. But I also know that when you're living this reality, even the most helpful information can feel overwhelming at times. And that's why the heart of this podcast will be about storytelling and sharing perspectives. Because as important as facts and definitions are, there is something very powerful and healing that comes from hearing someone's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and experiences. For so many of us, this disease comes with a long list of questions. What does HD look like in my life? Do I want to test? Do I want to know? What happens if I do? What happens if I don't? How do I keep moving forward while I'm carrying something this heavy? What happens to all the people and things I love and care about? How do I support the other people in my life that are experiencing the impacts of this disease? I want to share stories of how people have persevered through difficult seasons. Not perfectly, not easily, not without grief, and not without hardship. Building acceptance and holding space for the incredible impacts of this disease is an exhausting battle we wake up and face every single day. But it is because of this, I believe there is an amplifying power that each of us hold. There is so much positive energy that we can put towards our lives, even in the middle of loss, mourning, fear, and uncertainty. And I want this podcast to reflect that truth. Not toxic positivity, not pretending everything is okay, but the inner strength, perseverance, and resilience that allows us to keep pushing onwards, no matter what. My goal for this podcast is to create a space where you feel seen, where you can listen to someone else's story or experience and know you aren't alone. And then to also hear what it looks like for people to move through those difficult moments, not only surviving, but thriving on the other side of them. Episodes will include a mix of personal reflections from my own experience as someone who lives gene positive, informative topics and conversations about HD, and guest speakers who will share their unique stories and lived experiences. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for taking the time to be gene positive with me.